moment. Here's the deal with the alleged cover-up by the Penn State administrators. Not only does it make no sense, not only did they have no incentive, not only is there no evidence, but there's no explanation for how it even happened. One of the questions I would love Frank Fina to be asked is, okay, there's actually two questions that I'm positive he can't answer. If this was a cover-up, whose idea was it? Whose idea was it, Frank? So are you saying it was Graham Spanier's idea? A former abuse victim himself who had never had any real, had one meeting with Sandusky about creating a football team at one of the other campuses for Penn State after he retired, barely knew the guy. So Graham Spanier, a respected Penn State president, is going to say to Curley and Schultz when they come to him with this, you know what, guys, I think we're going to start a criminal cover-up. Well, if that had happened, as insanely stupid as that would have been, guess what would have occurred the moment the indictments came down? The moment Curley and Schultz get indicted, what are they going to do? They're going to flip on Spanier. In fact, I think that's what the prosecution thought was going to happen. I think they were stunned. That's why Spanier didn't get indicted at first. So when Curley and Schultz don't flip on Spanier, they wait a few more months, and then just before an election, just before Attorney General Kelly's term is over, they indict Spanier. Well, okay, so we know Spanier can't be the person who started this because Curley and Schultz would have flipped on him. Well, what about Curley and Schultz? Maybe they started this idea of a cover-up. Okay, so again, they don't have any incentive to do it. There's no evidence really that they did, but let's examine that. So these respected guys are going to go to the president of the university and say, hey, we think we need to cover this criminal pedophile, Jerry Sandusky, his crimes. We need to cover his crimes up and pretend they didn't exist and hope for the best. Not only is that insanely stupid from just a practical standpoint, in 99.9% of times, Spanier is going to fire Curley and Schultz. I mean, they've just come to him with a proposal for a criminal cover-up with no incentive. So Fina cannot answer the question, who is it who came up with the idea for the cover-up? And he can't answer the question, why is it that none of the three have flipped on the others? Because they obviously would if there was a cover-up. They haven't flipped because there was no cover-up. Now, interestingly, Frank Fina does not believe, apparently, that Joe Paterno was part of a cover-up. And this is a fascinating element of this particular interview.
As for the legendary Paterno, who was fired and died of lung cancer months later, Fina believes finger-pointing over the icon's role or influence in an alleged cover-up is misplaced.
Do you believe that Coach Paterno was a part of the conspiracy to conceal, to cover up the crimes at Penn State by Jerry Sandusky?
I do not, and I'm viewing this strictly on the evidence, not any kind of fealty to anybody. I did not find that evidence. I always viewed Paterno as just one piece of this case, not the most important piece, not the center point of this. This isn't the Joe Paterno story. This is a story about Jerry Sandusky, Spanier, Schultz, and Curley.
But you know as well as I do, Frank, Joe Paterno was the most powerful man on that campus, arguably the most powerful coach in college football. He knew what was going on in that university, and the argument is if he knew what he knew, he should have put a stop to it. He should have done more.
Well, that's right. And I don't see any need to judge him beyond his own words. And I'm not defending him at all. I think the realistic view of him is that, first of all, he was one of the few people that did anything. He did come forward. He did report this to his supervisors, the head of the police department. And ultimately, he said it best. I didn't do enough. I should have done more.
All right. I could talk for hours about that whole series of statements there. But first of all, Fina completely misquotes Joe Paterno. He does not say, I didn't do enough, I should have done more. He says, in hindsight, I wish I had done more, which is a totally different statement with a very different interpretation than what Fina says there. Katayan, of course, fights him, which he doesn't fight him on anything else, really, in the entire interview, except for that, which I find really telling about where Katayan is coming from. And then, by the way, CBS completely spikes that bombshell. I mean, that's a bombshell. The Sandusky prosecutor says Joe Paterno was not involved in a cover-up, yet they pretended that was not a big story, and CBS spiked their own bombshell, which is so classically typical of this entire case. But let's look at the logic here. So he's saying that Joe Paterno was not involved in a cover-up. Completely, totally, 100% agree. Except here's the problem, Frank Fina. I'm not sure which is more absurd. The idea that Joe Paterno was part of a cover-up at Penn State and that it involved the Penn State administrators, but not Mike McQueary somehow, or that Joe Paterno was not involved in a cover-up. How in the world do you have a cover-up involving Penn State football for all these years without Joe Paterno? It's ludicrous. It's insane. It didn't happen, but Fina is once again using outcome-based philosophies or thinking. He wants to create an outcome. He's not worried about the truth. He needs an outcome, and part of the reason, I think, that he's doing this is because I think he's trying to do two things. Separate Joe Paterno from the three Penn State administrators. Paterno is dead, and I think he feels like it's possible that if the administrators ever go to trial, that there might be one or two jurors there who connect Joe Paterno with the administrators, and if the administrators are guilty, then they're convicting Paterno, and that they won't do that. That's just a theory on my part that may actually be giving them too much credit. I also find it interesting, and this is related to the outcome-based thinking from Fina, that we've recently learned that Fina told the grand jury judge, back when he was lying about the age of the McQueary victim, saying he was 8 years old to the judge, he also said that part of the proof that there had to have been an assault that Paterno was told about was that because Joe Paterno did so much in response. In other words, he immediately calls Curley and Schultz, there's a meeting, it's a weekend, and he contacts them right away, he follows up with McQueary, and so in Fina's mind, Paterno wouldn't do this if it was just Sandusky being found in a shower with a boy on a Friday night, which I find to be hilarious because Fina actually says to the judge that showering with a boy is not a big enough deal to facilitate Paterno taking all these actions. So wait a minute, which is it? So did Paterno not do enough, or did Paterno actually do too much based upon the actual allegation at the time, which was nothing more than a shower with a boy? The reality is that the prosecution doesn't have a consistent theory because their case doesn't make sense. They constantly have to say things which don't fit with other parts of their case to create a narrative. And the only reason they get away with it is because the media is completely in the tank. The media loves this narrative more than a 5-year-old loves Santa Claus. And that's the reality of this whole case, folks. You've not been told the truth. You haven't even been told a truth that makes any damn sense. And what I find to be most amazing and frustrating is the real truth of this case not only is much better news than what the news media will tell you, because I don't think anybody ever got sexually assaulted, but it's also far more interesting, compelling storyline than the myth that the media created. So that's the truth of how the prosecution handled this case. Not the political versions of Kathleen Kane or the news media or what other conspiracy theorists want to say about what really did and did not happen in this case. I have no stake here except the truth, no connection to Penn State, not making a dime. I've destroyed my career over it, but at least now you have the truth. That's the real truth about how the Sandusky prosecutors actually handled this case and how it is that a man who is likely innocent is going to die in prison. For more in this case, please continue to visit www.framingpaterno.com.